So once you brainstormed your essay, you're now going to be outlining your ideas into the wider structural framework of your essay. So you're going to think about how you can incorporate your ideas into the introduction, into your main body, and then also into your conclusion. Don't forget, the structural idea involves these three parts. You have your intro, your main body, and your conclusion. You got your ideas. How are you going to formulate them? Well, it's good to probably take maybe 2 or 3 points from one side of the argument and try and flesh them out. These are the ideas that you are most comfortable with and that you have the most information with overall. So here's an example about an outline for ideas using some of the previous examples that we had. So your introduction, you may think about advertising in schools as being a great idea for school funding. That will be basically your essay hook and your essay focus. You've taken one side in that you agree that advertising is good and it's great for school. How can you flesh that out? Well, here's your idea for the introduction. So your main body is going to take some of the ideas that you had in your brainstorming and you're going to incorporate these into your main body of the text, basically being the meat and bones of your essay. So you might take the point of many schools being underfunded and controlled advertising could bring in needed money. That's your first point of view and your first supporting evidence. Student teachers could vote on which companies are allowed to advertise, and schools do not need to accept advertising from inappropriate companies. So in the main body, as an example, I have taken 2 to 3 of these viewpoints as my supporting argument for the main idea, which is that advertising in schools is a great idea for school funding, as outlined in the introduction. Finally, your conclusion could basically re-sum up some of the ideas that you had in your main body. For example, controlled advertising in schools could be very beneficial because it basically rewords what you've already mentioned in your main body in your introduction as a way of summarizing your ideas. So don't forget, introduction is going to involve your outline, your viewpoint, for or against. Your main body, you're going to take 1, 2 maximum of some of your ideas from your brainstorming session, and you're going to flesh those out. Your conclusion is basically going to restate what you've already said and thought of in your introduction and your main body. Essay example. You've done your brainstorming. You've got your ideas down. You're now going to start on to strategy number 3, which is writing your first draft. So how long do you have to write? Can anyone remember from earlier? Remember, you have 20 minutes to write your first draft. Keep in mind, it's only your first draft in those 20 minutes. You will hopefully have some time at the end to spruce it up with some reviewing and proofreading techniques. Should you write the entire time? As I've said, no. You need to take a few minutes at the end in order to proofread. So let's move on and talk a little bit about some transition and linking words that we can use in our essay. So in order to link our ideas together and even to give our essay a bit of coherence in terms of our viewpoints, some transition and linking words are very, very useful. I have compiled a handy graph here for you that you can use in order to use some of your linking words. Now for this essay, we're going to be focusing a little bit on our comparing, contrasting, adding, and illustrating words. So when we want to combine 2 ideas together which are similar, they might be too positive or they might be too negative, we can use the words in the top left-hand corner for adding. And, as well as, moreover, furthermore, in addition to, on top of that, another point is. If we look at the sequencing words too, in which we're actually going through a series of ideas and events from the first to the last, we can use some of these sequencing transition words. First, firstly, first of all. Second, secondly, second of all. Third, thirdly, third of all. Next, meanwhile, now, subsequently, as well as finally for our last few points. When we're comparing ideas, we can use words like similarly, likewise, as with, like, equally, and the same way. And when we actually want to contrast ideas, if one is actually opposite to the section on adding, we can use some of these words. But, however, although, unless, except, apart from, as long as, and if. Now, when we have 2 different viewpoints and we want to ensure that we have progressed in highlighting that this viewpoint is different from the previous one, we can use some of our contrasting words, such as whereas, alternatively, unlike, on the other hand, conversely, having said that, nevertheless, and however. Now keep in mind, for this style of essay, you're only going to be asked to argue one viewpoint. So you're not really going to need to use some of these contrasting words. But in case you're asked to do an essay in which you have to argue both viewpoints, the for and the against, the plus and the minus, you will need to use some of your contrasting words. Cause and effect, we have because of, as a result of, consequently, therefore, thus, owing to, and due to. So we might want to think about the beneficial effects of advertising. We can say that advertising can be incredibly beneficial because of the revenue it brings to the school. Advertising can be incredibly beneficial owing to the need for it to bring revenue into the school. Summary, we would use these words in the conclusion. We would start off by saying words like in short, on the whole, in other words, on the whole, overall, generally, in general, and in brief. Emphasizing a viewpoint, the final one. Above all, in particular, especially, significantly, indeed, and notably. There might be a lot of information here for you in terms of transition words. It's a good idea actually for you to do your own research in your own time, because using these words will actually give you more points and a higher score in the end test if you use them effectively. So take a few of these words each time, see how you can incorporate them into your essay, and use them effectively as well as you can. So you've written your first draft. You've got your introduction, you've got your main body, you've got your conclusion. You've used your examples, you've used some transition words. You have now a little bit of time left at the end of the essay. Well, what can you do in order to review your essay? As I said, reviewing is incredibly important because you may actually have made several mistakes that you didn't think you did to begin with. And also you can then review in your own time in order to hopefully maybe flesh out some words you might have missed or make some editing corrections. So first thing to focus on is, have you remained focused on your topic? As I said earlier, if you have not focused on your topic, you could use a lot of marks. So you need to ensure that your essay title reflects what you have written in your main texts. Have you talked about one side or the other, or have you digressed off the topic? Read it and focus on it again. Have you written between 200 and 300 words? Remember, you can write as little as 180 words and as many as 330 words. There is a 10% leeway, but you will lose marks if you come outside of this word count. So a good idea would be to count your first line, see how many words you have in your first line. Often it comes between 10 and 14 words, and then multiply that by how many lines you have for a rough word count. Or if you want to be more time consuming, you can count it individually. But as long as you're roughly in the ballpark of 200 to 300 words, then you have fulfilled that aspect of the test. Have you used your transition words? Have you used words to add to a point? Have you used your words of contrast? Have you used your sequencing words? Using transition words is actually a very, very good indicative skill of high academic writing. So incorporating these into the test will be a good way for you to gain more points, as long as they are used accurately and not used excessively. Have you used academic register? What do I mean by academic register? I'm referring to formal writing. Are you writing formally? Are you using contractions? Are you using personal pronouns? Now, you shouldn't be using any of these words like personal pronouns in excess, like I, we, they. You should not be contracting your words. You should not be writing I'm instead of I am. You should use formal language as much as you can. With the full academic register of the word. Think about it as writing an email to a boss. How would you write an email to a boss? Would you use slang and colloquialisms, or would you try and keep it as formal as possible? Academic register is key. Any contractions, as I said. Have you written words like I'm, there, we're, instead of I am, they are, or we are? It's important not to use these in the written exam. Perfectly fine in the speaking, but as I said, it kind of links into the academic register side of things. We should not be using these in a written form. Lengthen the word. Do not contract it. Any personal pronouns? Have you used I, we, they, he, she? you should not be using these pronouns. You should be thinking more so about what the word actually significantly means. Don't use the pronoun, find what the word originally referred to, and then paraphrase it instead. This refers to the academic register side of things too. So don't use personal pronouns if you can avoid it. Are there any subject-verb agreement errors? Have you written he like instead of he likes? Have you written I is instead of I am?